If you're listening to this, you may drift off before the end. So before you do, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Before we start, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Now, close your eyes. Just relax, take a deep breath and let everything go. Good night. Now we can begin. The first time it happened, I dismissed it as a coincidence. I had always been prone to vivid dreams, ones where the air felt thick with meaning, where colors seemed richer, and where time stretched and contracted at will. But this one was different. It had weight. It lingered. I found myself walking down a street I didn't recognize, though it felt oddly familiar. The cobblestones were damp beneath my feet, their uneven surfaces whispering under the hush of a fog-draped sky. The buildings leaned inward as if sharing secrets, their windows dark, their doors sealed tight. No streetlights, no distant traffic hum, only the sound of my footsteps and the occasional flicker of movement in the periphery of my vision. At first, I thought I was alone, but then I saw them, figures standing in the mist, their outlines wavering like candle flames. They weren't looking at me directly, not at first, but I could feel their attention shift as I moved forward. A tightening in the air, a subtle tilt of their heads. They recognized me, not as a stranger, but as someone they had seen before. I turned to look behind me, half expecting to see another version of myself trailing in my wake. But the street stretched empty, dissolving into the fog. When I faced forward again, the figures had moved closer. Their faces were ordinary, too ordinary. The kind of faces you forget the moment you look away, as if they were borrowed, as if they could be traded like masks. Their eyes, however, held something deeper, a quiet awareness, a waiting. I tried to speak, but my voice was swallowed by the fog. One of them, an older woman with silver, threaded hair and a dress that shimmered like dusk, lifted a hand in greeting. Not a wave, not a beckon, just a quiet acknowledgement, as if we had done this before. A sense of déjà vu washed over me, thick and undeniable. Had I been here before, I didn't wake up with a start. There was no jolt, no cold sweat. Instead, I drifted back into wakefulness the way a boat drifts toward shore, slowly, gently, inevitability. The lingering impression of the dream clung to me like a scent, familiar yet unplaceable. It was just a dream. That's what I told myself. But when I fell asleep the next night, I was back on that street, and this time they spoke my name. I told myself I wouldn't dream of that place again. But as soon as I drifted into sleep, I felt the shift, the strange weightlessness of stepping between worlds. When my vision cleared, I was back on the same street, the cobblestones slick beneath my feet, the air thick with a damp chill. Only this time, the figures were already waiting for me. The silver-haired woman stood at the center, just as before. The others flanked her, different faces, yet familiar. Their expressions were neutral, unreadable, but their eyes held something deeper. "Recognition, you're late," she said, her voice as soft as a breath. The words sent a ripple through me, an unease that clung to my skin. I wanted to ask what she meant, but the dream had its own rules. My voice wouldn't come. I tried again, but the only sound was the distant hush of unseen water, waves lapping against a shore I couldn't see. The street was different tonight, narrower. The buildings leaned in closer, their facades cracked, their windows fogged from the inside. I hadn't noticed that before, or had it always been this way? I stepped forward, and the figures parted, allowing me through. Their heads turned in unison as I passed, their gazes pressing against my skin like fingertips. The woman didn't move. She only watched, then she said something I wasn't meant to hear. "Don't forget this time." The dream pulled away from me before I could react. I woke up in my bed, my sheets tangled around my legs, the weight of those words still clinging to me. My heart wasn't racing, my body wasn't cold with fear, and yet something deep inside me whispered that I had lost something, that I had left something behind in that dream, or worse, something had followed me out of it. The hush of the dream never quite settled. like an unfinished breath waiting to exhale. I was standing at the edge of a street I didn't recognize, yet the pavement felt worn beneath my feet, as if I had walked this path countless times before. The air was thick not with mist, not with fog, but something denser, something unseen, pressing down as if the sky itself carried weight. A single streetlight buzzed overhead, its dim glow flickering with uncertainty. The houses along the street were identical, yet different variations of the same blueprint, with slight distortions, like a copied image smudged in places. Some windows had curtains drawn tight, others were open but showed no interior, only darkness. The silence between them stretched, watching. I took a step forward. The gravel shifted in a way that felt intentional, like the earth was acknowledging my movement. As I walked, I passed a house with a door slightly ajar. A warm, golden light pulsed from within, steady but unnatural. It didn't spill out the way normal light would. Instead, it held its place, as if reluctant to cross the threshold. I hesitated, something about the doorway pulling at the edges of my memory. A whisper, no, not a voice, more like the memory of a whisper, an impression left behind in the air. I turned my head sharply, expecting to catch someone standing just behind me. But the street remained empty, its presence folding in on itself like a room withdrawing into a smaller version of itself. I turned back to the glowing doorway, feeling my breath slow, my limbs heavy. There was an invitation in that light, but also a warning. Then a shift, small but unmistakable. The shadow of a figure moved just beyond the light, inside the house. A silhouette, standing perfectly still, not watching but waiting. I couldn't see its eyes, but I felt them. A shiver ran through me, not from fear, but from familiarity. I had been here before. I had seen this shadow before. The thought settled deep, spreading its roots before I could pluck them out. Something in my mind urged me to turn back, but my body disobeyed. I took a step closer. The house inhaled, the light trembled, the silhouette remained motionless, and then a shift. The dream folded. I was somewhere else. No transition, no movement. Just a blink, and the world had rewritten itself. I was now inside a room, a bedroom, but not my own. The walls were the color of dust, the furniture slightly misaligned, as if someone had tried to recreate a familiar space from fragmented memory. A bed sat in the center, covers pulled back as though someone had just left. A clock on the nightstand, and ticked softly, but the hands weren't moving. A voice, a real voice this time. You always hesitate at the door. I turned, but there was no one there. The whisper had not come from the room. It had come from the dream itself. The air thickened, and I felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing in. The walls seemed to inch closer, the space tightening around me in a way that felt neither hostile nor welcoming, only inevitable. I took a breath, steadying myself. The dream had changed, but the dream had not ended. The bedroom was still. Too still, like a photograph of a room rather than the room itself. I was standing in the center, caught between the silence and something just beyond it. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and something faintly metallic, like the lingering trace of a memory I couldn't quite place. The bed remained undisturbed, covers pulled back in a way that suggested someone had just risen from it. The nightstand held a lamp with a shade tilted slightly askew. Beside it, the clock that didn't tick. I reached out and placed my hand on it, half expecting the glass to be warm, as though it had absorbed the heat of time itself. But it was cold, too cold. The whisper came again, not from behind me, not from the room, from the walls. From the air itself. You always hesitate at the door. I turned quickly, expecting, hoping, to catch something, someone. But the room was empty, only, something had changed. The door I had entered through was no longer there. My breath caught. The walls stretched taller, the ceiling more distant, the space subtly shifting like a living thing adjusting its posture. The more I looked, the more I noticed the slight wrongness of it all. The way the shadows bent unnaturally, the way the grain in the wooden floor seemed to ripple beneath my feet like disturbed water. I wasn't trapped, not exactly, but the dream had made its decision. I took a step forward, moving toward where the door had been. Instead, I found a mirror. It had not been there before. Its frame was dark, carved with patterns that seemed to change when I wasn't looking directly at them. The glass was smudged, as though someone had pressed their fingers against it over and over, trying to reach through. I swallowed and stepped closer. My reflection moved with me, and then, it didn't. I stopped, but the reflection did not. It continued moving, just slightly, just enough to be wrong. A slow tilt of the head, a widening of the eyes. Not smiling, not frowning, just watching. The light in the room flickered, the walls groaned, and then my reflection whispered, "Wake up." The dream collapsed. I was somewhere else, not waking, not sleeping, somewhere in between. The walls were gone, replaced by an open space stretching endlessly in all directions. A void, but not empty. Shapes flickered at the edges of my vision, distant figures, shifting landscapes, doorways that vanished the moment I tried to focus on them. A wind stirred, though there was no source. It carried the scent of something old, something familiar. I knew this place, and then, as though the dream itself had exhaled, a new room materialized around me. It was smaller, confined, the walls pressed in, the furniture sparse but arranged with intention. A table, a chair, a single candle burning low, its wax pooling in thick rivulets. I knew this place too, because I had been here before. Because someone was waiting. The candle's glow flickered uncertainly, casting restless shadows against the walls. The wax had been dripping for a long time, far longer than it should have, pooling thickly onto the wooden table beneath it. I watched as another droplet formed at the tip, stretching impossibly long before it fell. The sound it made was too loud, like a clock ticking in reverse. I knew this place. I didn't want to know it. The chair across from me was occupied. A man sat there, still as stone, hands folded neatly on the table. His fingers were long, too long, tapering to sharp points. His face was smooth, his features nondescript, as if unfinished. But his eyes were where the details had gathered. They were familiar, too familiar. "Do you recognize me now?" he asked. His voice was quiet, calm. But beneath the surface of that calm was something else, something waiting. I shook my head. I didn't trust my voice. The man leaned forward just slightly. "But I recognize you." The room was holding its breath. The candle guttered, its flame stretching unnaturally before righting itself. The wax continued to drip. Too slow, then too fast, then still again. I knew I should respond, but the words felt heavy in my throat, weighed down by something I didn't understand. The silence between us stretched, pressing in on me like a closing door. "Where is this place?" I finally managed. The man smiled, or maybe he didn't. His face shifted, as though the concept of smiling was foreign to it, something it had observed but never quite learned. "You've been here before," he said, "many times." I swallowed. "I don't remember." "Not yet." The candle's flame pulsed, flaring for an instant before dimming. A sound filled the room, a distant creaking, as though the house itself was stirring, shifting. I turned my head slightly, just enough to glance over my shoulder. There was a door behind me. It hadn't been there before. My pulse quickened. The handle was old brass, dulled with age, the wood dark and heavy. I didn't remember entering through it, but I could feel the weight of its presence pressing against my back, like it had always been there, just waiting for me to notice. The man watched me carefully, his expression unreadable. "Do you want to open it?" I turned back to him. "Where does it lead?" His fingers tapped against the table. Once, twice. The sound was hollow, like the ticking of an unseen clock. "You already know." I didn't, but at the same time I did. My body tensed, as if bracing for something unseen. My breath felt too shallow, the air in the room too thick. The candlelight flickered again, stretching the shadows impossibly tall. And then, just as I reached for the door, the candle went out. Darkness swallowed everything. The chair scraped against the floor. Footsteps moving toward me, then nothing. The dream shifted. I was somewhere else, again. The silence after the candle went out wasn't empty. It was layered like something was waiting just beneath it, pressing in from all sides. I stood in the dark, not knowing if I was still in the room with the table, the candle, and the man who knew me. Not knowing if I was alone. Then the air changed, not a sound, not a touch. Just a shift, subtle but absolute, like stepping onto a surface you thought was solid only to find it wasn't there at all. The dark had weight now. Something exhaled nearby, a soft, slow breath, just inches from my ear. I turned, too fast, too sharp, but there was nothing. Just endless black stretching outward, swallowing the room I had been in. I knew without seeing that the candle was gone, the table was gone, the man was gone. Or maybe I was the one who had disappeared. I took a cautious step forward. The ground was solid, though I had no idea what it was made of. My hands found nothing but empty space. I tried another step, and another, then light, not in front of me. Not behind me, but beneath me. It started as a faint glow, a soft luminescence creeping through the cracks in the dark. I looked down and the floor, or what should have been the floor, was changing. It was wood, old, uneven, worn by time. A hallway stretched ahead, lit by an unseen source. I had been here before. The recognition settled in my chest like a weight. The walls were faded wallpaper, curling at the edges, patterned with something that might have been flowers once, but had since blurred into something unrecognizable. Doors lined the corridor, identical in shape, identical in color, but I knew, without knowing how I knew, that they did not lead to the same places. And I knew that some of them were not meant to be opened. A sound broke the stillness, soft, distant. Footsteps, not mine, steady, slow, coming from the far end of the hall. I turned my head toward the sound, heart hammering against my ribs. The hallway stretched on, impossibly long now, as if the walls had grown while I wasn't looking. The last door at the very end was cracked open. The footsteps stopped, silence, then a whisper. It wasn't words, it wasn't even a voice, just the idea of one, threading through the air like something not meant to be heard but felt. I took a step back. The door at the end of the hall opened a little wider. I couldn't see inside. I didn't want to. But I knew that if I didn't move now, if I didn't turn away, something would step out. And I wasn't ready to see what it was. I spun on my heel, moving toward the nearest door that felt safe. My hand closed around the handle. It was warm, almost too warm. I hesitated just for a second, and in that second I felt it. A presence. Not behind me, not in front of me, but above. I didn't look up. I couldn't. I twisted the handle, shoved the door open, and stepped through. The hallway vanished. I was somewhere else, again. The shift was immediate. Gone was the hallway with its endless doors, the whispering presence, the unseen thing above me. Now, I stood in a vast field of tall grass, stretching endlessly in every direction. The wind moved through it in slow waves, rustling like a voice too quiet to understand. Above me, the sky was a dull, overcast gray, not stormy, not heavy, just empty. I turned in a slow circle. There was no path, no landmarks, no horizon, only the grass and the sky, but I wasn't alone. I could feel that much. Somewhere in the distance, something was watching. I took a step forward, the grass brushing against my fingertips. It was soft, almost unnaturally so. The wind carried a scent I couldn't quite place, earthy, but with something else mixed in. Something metallic, something wrong. Then I saw it. Far ahead, barely visible through the shifting waves of grass, was a figure. It stood perfectly still, facing me, not moving, not approaching, just waiting. The longer I looked at it, the harder it became to tell if it was a person at all. The shape was right, but something about it wasn't. Too still, too silent. The wind carried the grass, but it did not move the figure's clothing. Or perhaps it wasn't wearing any. I took another step forward, and another. With each step, the distance between us seemed to shift, though neither of us moved. One moment, it felt close enough to touch. The next, it was far away again, as if I were the one being pulled back. Then, without warning, it took a step toward me. The motion was wrong. Not unnatural, not monstrous, just wrong. Like a puppet being guided by invisible strings, my breath caught in my throat. The wind died, the grass stilled. And then the figure spoke, not with words, with my voice. "Where were you before this?" A shiver crawled up my spine. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. The figure took another step forward. This time, the grass around it darkened, as if it had been scorched by something unseen. My instincts screamed at me to turn, to run, to do anything but stand there. But something held me in place. Not fear, recognition. I knew this place. I had been here before. The figure lifted a hand, slow, deliberate. It pointed past me. I turned. There, behind me, stood a door. It hadn't been there before. It shouldn't be there at all. A door, freestanding in the middle of the field, untouched by wind, by time, by logic. A door I knew I had seen before. I looked back toward the figure. It was closer now, too close. Its face, if it even had one, was a blur. An absence of features, a void where a person should have been. But I could feel it watching me. I turned back to the door. There was no handle, only an inscription carved deep into the wood. I stepped closer. The words twisted as I tried to read them, shifting, unraveling, reforming. But one phrase remained clear. "You were never supposed to leave." My breath hitched. The figure took another step. I reached for the door, pressing my hand flat against its surface. Cold, solid, real. The figure moved faster now, closing the distance in an instant. I pushed. The door gave way beneath my hand, opening into darkness. I stepped through, and the field was gone. I was somewhere else, again. The moment I stepped through the door, I felt it. A shift, like stepping off solid ground into water. The air was heavier, warmer. The scent of damp earth and something faintly sweet filled my lungs. I blinked, adjusting to the dim glow surrounding me. I wasn't in the field anymore. I stood in a vast greenhouse. Glass panes arched high above, though they were clouded and dark, revealing nothing beyond. Thick vines curled around rusted metal beams, stretching downward like reaching fingers. The plants here were alive in a way I couldn't quite explain. Their leaves trembled, though there was no wind. Their petals turned ever so slightly, as if aware of my presence. And then there were the flowers. They were unlike anything I had ever seen. Deep purple, almost black, with centers that shimmered like wet ink. They pulsed softly, as if breathing. I took a cautious step forward. The gravel beneath my feet crunched, but the sound was swallowed by the heavy silence around me. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped, slow and steady. The air was thick with humidity, clinging to my skin. Then, movement, not from the plants, from the shadows between them. I wasn't alone. I turned my head slightly, trying not to be obvious about it. In the periphery of my vision, something shifted. A figure, not like the one in the field. This one was smaller. Closer, I took another step forward. The plants parted ahead of me, revealing a narrow path. It wasn't there a moment ago. Or maybe I just hadn't noticed. I hesitated, then followed it. The deeper I went, the stronger the feeling became. This place was watching me. Not just the figure in the shadows, not just the plants, the greenhouse itself. The glass overhead groaned softly, as if something pressed against it from the other side. I kept walking. The path twisted, curving where it shouldn't have. The air grew warmer. The scent of the flowers became stronger, almost overpowering. And then a whisper, soft, close. It wasn't a voice. It was the sound of leaves brushing together, but I understood it. "You were here before." I froze. The whisper came again, shifting between words and rustling foliage. "You left something behind." A memory flickered at the edges of my mind, not of this place, but of something similar. A different greenhouse, a different night. I swallowed, my throat dry. Ahead, the path ended at an arched doorway. It was covered in vines, but the moment I approached, they pulled away, retreating like living things. Beyond the arch, there was no greenhouse, only a bedroom, my bedroom, from a place I hadn't been in years. The bed was unmade, the curtains swayed in a non-existent breeze, and on the nightstand sat something that did not belong. A single deep purple flower, just like the ones in the greenhouse. I stepped inside, the door shut behind me. The bedroom smelled of dust and something faintly floral, like dried petals left too long in a forgotten book. I stood just inside the doorway, staring at the flower on the nightstand. Its deep purple petals shimmered under the dim light, pulsing as if it had a heartbeat. The air in the room was different, thicker than I remembered, carrying the weight of something unspoken. This was my childhood bedroom, or at least it looked like it. The faded wallpaper, the slightly crooked bookshelf in the corner, the old wooden desk against the wall. It was all exactly as I had left it years ago. And yet something was wrong. The bed was unmade, the sheets twisted and bunched as if someone had just climbed out of them. The closet door was ajar, revealing only darkness beyond. The window was open, but the curtains barely moved, as though the air outside was holding its breath. I took a slow step forward. The floorboards didn't creak. That was the first sign that this wasn't real. I reached out, my fingers hovering just above the flower. The moment my shadow passed over it, the petals trembled. A faint whisper curled through the air, not words, but something close, like the rustling of leaves trying to form a thought. I hesitated, then carefully I picked up the flower. The second I did, the room changed. The walls darkened, the wallpaper curling at the edges as if burned by invisible flames. The books on the shelf blurred, their titles shifting and warping before my eyes. The open window now looked out onto something vast and unfamiliar. No longer the backyard I had known, but a rolling expanse of black hills under a sky that pulsed like a living thing. The air turned colder, and then I felt it, a presence behind me. I turned slowly. The closet door, once slightly ajar, now gaped wide open. The darkness inside was not empty. Something stood there, tall, still, watching. Its shape was indistinct, as if the shadows had folded themselves into the rough outline of a figure. It did not move, but I could feel it, its awareness pressing against me like a held breath. I clutched the flower tighter. The whisper returned, threading through the silence like a sigh. "You left something behind." The same words I had heard in the greenhouse. The figure in the closet remained motionless, but the space around it shifted. The floorboards at its feet seemed deeper, like they weren't just wood but an opening, leading somewhere I couldn't see. I took a step back. The walls of the room continued to darken, the ceiling pressing lower. The flower in my hand pulsed faster, its petals beginning to curl inward. A choice: step forward into the darkness, or turn back into the shifting landscape beyond the window. Neither felt like safety, neither felt like escape. I took a breath, steadying myself, and then I made my choice. The sky outside was no longer a sky. It pulsed like a living thing, rolling and shifting in slow, rhythmic waves. Deep streaks of violet and black bled together, the stars blinking in and out, as though submerged beneath an unseen surface. The air that drifted through the open window carried no scent, no earth, no rain, no life, only stillness. I stood at the threshold of the room, the fading flower gripped tightly in my hand. The figure in the closet had not moved, but I could feel its presence pressing against me like a held breath, thick and waiting. The walls of the bedroom had continued to decay. The edges of the wallpaper peeled like skin, curling back to reveal something deeper beneath. Not wood, not plaster, but something soft, something that moved. The bookshelf in the corner had begun to lean, its shelves warping in slow, deliberate bends, as if stretching toward the ceiling. The bed had all but vanished, its frame swallowed by the shifting floor, leaving only an imprint in the dust. The choice remained: step forward into the closet, or turn and climb through the window into the unknown expanse beyond. I hesitated. The flower pulsed once in my palm, a shudder that sent a strange warmth up my arm. The petals, once dark purple, had begun to gray at the edges, curling inward like a closing eye. "You left something behind." The whisper came again, threading through the silence, its source impossible to trace. It wasn't the figure in the closet. It wasn't the wind. It was something deeper, something that had been waiting for me to hear it. I turned my head slowly, my eyes shifting between the two paths before me. The closet, it was nothing but darkness, an opening that did not lead into the back of the small space, but into something far deeper, something that swallowed light itself. It carried a weight, a pull, as if something inside had been expecting me. The window, in contrast, was impossibly still. The world beyond remained vast and open, yet utterly silent, as though no wind had ever touched the rolling black hills. No movement, no signs of life, just the slow shifting of the sky, the deep, Inkai waves undulating above the horizon. The walls of the room shuddered, the bookshelf groaned, the flower pulsed again, the figure in the closet shifted. A movement so small, so subtle, that I almost convinced myself I had imagined it. Almost, I swallowed hard. Then, I made my decision. I turned toward the window. The wooden frame felt cold beneath my fingertips as I hoisted myself up, my arms trembling slightly from a weight that wasn't just physical. The moment my body crossed the threshold, a rush of air hit me, not from the world outside, but from behind. From the room, a deep, slow inhale, like something had been waiting for me to leave. I didn't look back. Instead, I climbed through, my feet touching the cool, unfamiliar earth beyond. The moment I did, the house behind me seemed to fade not all at once, but in slow, deliberate increments, as though being unraveled thread by thread. The walls darkened, the windows dimmed, the doorway I had just exited from collapsing into itself like the pages of a book closing. I took a step forward. The ground was soft beneath me, shifting slightly, like damp soil. The black hills stretched endlessly in all directions, rolling and uneven, their surfaces marked with faint, rippling patterns like the surface of a quiet sea. The sky continued its slow, rhythmic pulse. I wasn't alone. Somewhere in the distance, figures stood, not moving, not approaching, just watching. The flower in my hand gave one final, faint pulse. Then the petals turned to dust. The dust from the flower swirled away in the air, carried by a wind I couldn't feel. I watched the last of the petals disintegrate between my fingers, the soft purple turning into nothingness before it even reached the ground. The figures in the distance remained still. I couldn't tell how far away they were. At first, they seemed miles apart, barely silhouettes against the rolling black hills. But the longer I looked, the more uncertain I became. There were no shadows in this place, no depth, no distance. The figures might have been close enough to reach out and touch, or they might have been standing at the farthest edge of the horizon. And they were watching me. I took a slow step forward. The earth beneath my feet shifted slightly, as if it weren't solid at all, but rather something dense and moving just beneath the surface. The sensation made my stomach turn. The sky rippled again, a deep, undulating pulse, not like the passage of time. Like a breath, the realization made my hands clench at my sides. I glanced back over my shoulder, expecting to see the house still unraveling, but there was nothing behind me now. No structure, no door, no sign I had ever stepped out of a room at all. The figures remained still. Watching, waiting, I swallowed hard and took another step forward. The moment my foot pressed down into the ground, one of the figures moved. A shift so subtle, so quiet, that I wasn't even sure I had seen it at first. But something had changed. The line of their posture, the angle of their head, the weight of their attention pressing deeper into my skin. I froze, then the whisper returned. You left something behind. It was not a voice, not really. It was more like a thought that had been placed inside my head, sliding in seamlessly between my own. It did not echo, it did not carry weight, but I felt it settle there, sinking into the spaces between my ribs. I forced myself to keep moving. Each step I took made the world around me shift. Subtle things at first. The texture of the ground seemed to change with each footfall, sometimes soft, sometimes rough, sometimes smooth like glass. I passed a tree that had not been there before, gnarled, leafless, blackened like a burned skeleton. Its branches curled inward, as if recoiling from the sky itself. The bark pulsed in time with the rippling horizon, veins of silver light threading through the cracks like something alive beneath its surface. I reached out, hesitated, then touched it with the tips of my fingers, a whisper, a memory, but not mine. A moment too brief to fully understand. An image of hands much smaller than mine, pressing into the same bark. A child's hands, and then the scent of something sweet, something familiar, honeysuckle. No, something else. Something I had once known, but had long since forgotten. Then it was gone. The tree stood lifeless once more. I exhaled, stepping away, glancing again toward the figures in the distance. One had disappeared. The others remained still. My pulse quickened. Something was wrong. I turned my head, scanning the hills around me. The land was shifting subtly, the curves and valleys changing when I wasn't looking. Not much, just enough to be uncertain of where I had been moments before. I took another step forward. The sky pulsed again. The ground beneath me trembled. No, breathed. I stopped walking. Somewhere behind me, a voice sighed. A long, slow exhale. I turned sharply. No one there. Only the tree, its bark darker than before. The figures in the distance remained still. But now there were fewer. Something had taken them, or worse, something had moved them. A hush settled over the landscape, heavy and absolute. It was not silence. Not truly. There was still the distant, near imperceptible rustling of the shifting hills, the low hum of a sky that seemed too vast and too close at the same time. But there were no echoes, no reverberations. It was as if sound could go no farther than my own skin. I took another step forward. The figures had not moved, but there were fewer than before. I couldn't remember how many had been standing there when I first arrived. I knew the number had changed, but the specifics eluded me, slipping through my thoughts like sand through open fingers. The tree behind me groaned. I turned. It had shifted again, not in location, not in form, but in presence. The branches curled tighter now, as if recoiling, as if withdrawing from something unseen. The veins of silver light threading through the bark pulsed once, twice, before fading back into a dull, uneven glow. A warning or a signal. I exhaled slowly. The world felt thinner than before, not smaller, but stretched too far, as if the space around me was wearing down at the edges. I could feel it pressing against me, pressing into me, as though I were walking through something denser than air. A whisper skated across my thoughts. You left something behind. It wasn't my voice, but it wasn't unfamiliar either. I turned my gaze back toward the figures. Something had changed. I couldn't say what. Their forms remained shadowed, faceless, standing against the undulating horizon. But there was a difference now, something in the way they stood, more alert, more expectant. They were waiting. Not for me, for something else. The sky pulsed again. This time, the breath of the world did not stop. A slow inhale, a slow exhale, as if something vast, something ancient, was waking up. A shift at the edge of my vision. I turned sharply. A door stood where nothing had been before. Not a house, not a structure, just a door. Tall, narrow, deep brown wood, carved with symbols I did not recognize but somehow understood. The frame was impossibly thin, holding nothing in place, standing against nothing at all. I stepped toward it. The air around me thickened, pressing against my arms, my legs, resisting the motion. A test or a barrier. Either way, I did not stop. The moment I reached the door, a warmth spread through my fingertips, curling through my palms as I placed my hand against the wood. It was solid, smooth beneath my touch, humming softly alive. It was waiting for me to decide. Beyond it, the figures had not moved. Or perhaps they had moved too much. I felt the pressure shift. The breath of the world held still. And then the door yawned open before me, revealing nothing but darkness. Not the absence of light, not a shadowed corridor or a dimly lit threshold, but something deeper, something vast and formless. It was not empty. I could feel that much. The way the air curled inward, the way the silence deepened, the way the pressure changed, thickening around me like unseen hands brushing too close. I hesitated, not out of fear, not exactly, but something in my mind whispered an instinct, an echo of a warning I couldn't quite remember. Behind me, the landscape remained still. The sky, the shifting hills, the figures that stood too far and too close at the same time. Their presence was steady, but I could feel their attention, silent, waiting, the moment stretched. Then the breath of the world exhaled, and the darkness before me pulsed. I stepped through. The moment I crossed the threshold, the sensation shifted. The air was warm, but not in a way that comforted. It was the kind of warmth that clung to the skin, heavy and unnatural, like the breath of something too large resting just out of sight. The space around me, if it could be called space at all, was vast and closed all at once. I could see nothing, yet I could feel everything. And then a flicker, a ripple in the dark. Shapes formed, slow and uncertain, as though pulling themselves from the fabric of the void. At first, I thought they were objects, furniture, perhaps, or remnants of something left behind. But as the details sharpened, I realized they were people. Dozens of them, no more, lining a hallway that stretched too far in both directions, their faces turned away, their bodies unnaturally still. Some stood against the walls, their heads bowed. Others faced doorways, hands raised as if frozen mid-motion. None of them moved, none of them acknowledged my presence, and yet I knew they were aware. The realization pressed against me, sent a slow shiver down my spine. I took a step forward. The floor did not echo beneath my footfall, yet I felt the impact resonate through the air. A shift, a pull, like the room itself was adjusting, reacting to my presence. Then, from the depths of the silence, a voice. Soft, distant, "You don't belong here." I turned sharply. The figures had not moved, but something had changed. The space between them had narrowed. The air felt thinner, stretched tight around my ribs. The voice had come from ahead, deeper within the corridor. I moved toward it. As I passed the frozen figures, I resisted the urge to glance at their faces. Some instinct told me it was a mistake to look. Not just because I feared what I might see, but because I feared what might look back. The hallway twisted. Or perhaps I twisted, and the hallway remained the same. The walls shimmered, no, not walls, something more fluid. The deeper I went, the more the space seemed to breathe around me. Another voice, closer. "You were not supposed to come back." The sound of it crawled under my skin. It was not spoken, not in the way a voice should be. It arrived fully formed in my mind, pressing against my thoughts like something that had always been there, waiting to be remembered. I turned a corner, and there at the end of the hallway stood a door, not like the one before. This one was different. It was smaller, older, the wood cracked and splintered, the brass handle tarnished, worn from countless touches. It was a door I had seen before, a door I knew, a door I should not remember. My fingers twitched at my side. I had a choice. The air held still, waiting for it. Behind me, the figures remained motionless, their unseen gazes pressing into my back. Ahead, the door loomed, its surface pulsing with something just beneath the wood. If I turned back now, would the hallway still be the same? Would it still be there at all? I exhaled. And then, before I could second guess, I reached out and pushed the door open. The door groaned as it swung inward, the sound deep and drawn out, as if the wood itself was reluctant to reveal what lay beyond. My breath hitched. The space inside was wrong. At first, it seemed like a room. The walls stretched upward, vanishing into a ceiling that wasn't there. The air shimmered, thick with something unseen, something that shifted like a held breath. The light, or what passed for light, had no source. It glowed in patches, creating pools of dim illumination while leaving others drowned in endless dark. And in the center of it all, a table, not an ordinary table. It was long, narrow, carved from something dark and polished. The surface bore no dust, no scratches, no signs of age or wear. Yet I knew it had been here for longer than I could comprehend. Along its length sat chairs, perfectly aligned, each facing inward, and they were not empty. The figures sat motionless, their backs straight, their hands resting on the table's surface. Their heads hung low, chins barely above their chests. I couldn't see their faces. The air around them rippled, distorting their features just enough to make them unreadable. Like looking at something beneath the surface of unsettled water. I took a step closer. A single breath escaped the room, not from the figures, not from me. The walls themselves seemed to sigh, exhaling in a slow, whispering release. The door behind me clicked shut on its own. The figures did not react, but I knew they had noticed. I hesitated, watching them. The silence pressed in, thick as a held breath. Then, movement, not from all of them, just one. The figure nearest to me shifted, just slightly, the tilt of its head raising as if listening. I froze, the space around it warped, a slow ripple bending the air in a way that sent a chill curling up my spine. My instinct screamed at me to step back, but I didn't, because something about this place, this moment, felt familiar. Like I had stood here before, like I had seen this before. A pulse of realization struck, but the details slipped through my fingers like sand. A memory just beyond reach, a dream I had forgotten upon waking. The figure straightened further. Its fingers curled slightly against the table. A small motion, an insignificant shift, and yet the weight of it sent my pulse hammering. Then the whisper, not spoken, not in sound. It arrived in my thoughts like something half remembered, pressing against the inside of my skull. You took too long. I swallowed hard. The others had not moved. They remained statues, heads bowed, breathless. But I felt them, felt the quiet awareness beneath their stillness, watching, waiting. The words sat heavy in my mind. I took another step forward. The floor did not creak beneath me, yet I felt the shift. Like the space itself had acknowledged my movement. The figure before me moved again this time, its fingers tapping once against the table. A deliberate sound. A single note in the otherwise oppressive quiet. My mouth was dry. What do you mean? I asked before I could stop myself. No answer. The air stirred, but nothing else changed. The table stretched further than it should. I counted the chairs. There were 13. I frowned. Hadn't there been more a moment ago? Another whisper. Sit. A deep instinct screamed against it. Every part of me resisted the command, and yet the chair nearest to me, empty, waiting, seemed to pull at my attention. My feet moved before I could stop them, not by force, not by any visible will beyond my own, but something in the weight of this moment, in the familiarity curling in my mind, told me I had been here before, that I had sat before, that I had done this before, and that I had failed. I lowered myself into the chair. The moment I did, the room exhaled again. A ripple spread outward, subtle but undeniable, shifting the air in a way that sent a slow shudder through my bones. The figures did not move, but the space felt tighter. I looked down at the table. For the first time, I noticed the surface was not smooth. Not truly, there were markings, shallow, precise, carved in delicate lines, not symbols, not words. Names. I traced my fingers over them, my skin prickling at the touch. The carvings were old. Some had been worn away, barely readable. I found my name, and beneath it scratched hastily, deep enough that the wood had splintered, something else. Do not forget. The chair beneath me felt neither warm nor cold, just there, a presence, not a thing. As though I hadn't truly sat down, but rather settled into something's waiting grasp. The air inside the room shifted again, slow and deliberate, like an unseen breath drawing in, then holding. The 12 figures around the table had not moved, but I knew they were aware. The sensation was like the weight of a gaze without eyes, a tension in the air where there should have been nothing at all. I traced my fingers over my name again, feeling the rough grooves in the wood, my name, carved there long before I arrived. But by who? I let my gaze drift to the scratched words beneath it. Do not forget. Forget what? The thought barely formed before the atmosphere thickened. A flicker in the air, like a shadow moving just outside my vision. Then, sound, not a word, not a voice. A scrape, faint, deliberate, fingertips against the table's surface. I turned my head, slow, careful. One of the figures 3 seats to my left had moved, not much, just a single hand raised from the tabletop, the fingers now resting lightly in the air above it. As though waiting for something, as though expecting something, the rest of them remained still. I swallowed, pulse loud in my ears. What am I supposed to remember? I asked, my voice quieter than I intended. The figure did not respond. But then another sound, a slow, drawn-out shift. Another figure, this time on the opposite side of the table, raised their hand in the same way. Not fully lifted, just hovering, waiting. The room exhaled. Not a sound, not wind. Just the unmistakable sensation of space expanding, like something had been drawn in and was now being released. The air felt heavier. The figures with their hands raised were familiar. I couldn't explain why. But the moment I focused on them, something in my mind itched, like a memory pushing just beneath the surface of my thoughts. Had I seen them before? No, that wasn't it. I had been them before. The realization made my stomach twist. This wasn't the first time I had sat at this table, and it wouldn't be the last. I forced my gaze downward again, staring at the words carved beneath my name. Do not forget. Something was wrong. Something was missing. Then, a sound, a whisper, not spoken, not even truly heard. Just felt, look. My hands tensed against the tabletop. The figures did not move, but something about them had changed. They were closer. I hadn't seen them move, hadn't heard them move, but the space between us had undeniably shrunk. The light in the room was dim, but I could almost see their faces now, almost, still blurred, still unreadable. But the shapes of them, I knew those shapes. Something inside me recoiled at the recognition, not because I feared them, but because I understood them, and because I knew, deep in my bones, beyond reason or explanation, that if I reached forward and touched them, I would remember. And I would never leave. I hesitated. The 2 figures who had raised their hands remained still, fingers just above the table's surface. An invitation, a warning, a choice. Something inside me screamed not to move, but another part, the part that had brought me here, the part that knew I had been here before, ached to reach out, to know, to understand, to remember. I lifted my hand, just slightly, and the figures exhaled in unison. The ripple in the air was so strong I nearly fell forward. The table beneath my hand was no longer wood. It was cold, it was stone, and it was wet. My breath hitched, not wet, slick. I looked down and everything shifted. The moment my fingers met the symbol, a shudder passed through the room. Not a gust of air, not a tremor in the ground, but something deeper. It was as though the walls themselves had inhaled, as though the unseen spaces between the floorboards and the ceiling had expanded to accommodate something vast. I kept my hand steady, though every instinct screamed at me to pull away. The stone was colder than before. It wasn't just the absence of warmth. It was an active, consuming cold, a cold that recognized me, a cold that had been waiting. A pulse throbbed beneath my fingertips, not a heartbeat, not truly, but something close. I felt the presence of the others before I saw them move. Their hands, once hovering, began to descend. One by one, fingertips met the surface of the table, and then the lights dimmed. Not in the way a candle flickers, not in the way electric bulbs fade. It was as if the concept of illumination itself was being undone. I opened my mouth, but I didn't speak, because something was happening. Something was changing. The symbol beneath my hand was no longer stone. I didn't move, but I felt the shift. The rough, ancient etching softened. The sensation was unsettling, like touching something solid and feeling it melt beneath my fingers, as if the world was giving way in response to my presence. I looked down, expecting to see the mark glowing or shifting, but instead there was nothing. The stone was gone. The table was gone. I was no longer touching anything at all, and yet I could still feel the weight of the surface beneath my palm, as if the space itself remembered its presence. A breath not my own. It was deep, slow, deliberate. I could hear it, but more than that, I could feel it. A ripple in the darkness, a presence moving just outside my field of vision. I turned my head. There was nothing there, and yet I wasn't alone. The first voice was low. It wasn't words, not yet. Just a sound, something old, something hollow. Then, the second voice joined it. A layered whisper, like two people speaking at once. The others at the table hadn't moved. They were frozen in place, eyes cast downward, hands still resting on the unseen surface. I tried to speak, but my voice felt locked in my throat. The whisper grew louder, not chaotic, not aggressive, but insistent, demanding something I didn't yet understand. Then a shift, a flicker of movement in the dark. Not an object, not a person, but a presence. It was watching me. I knew that as certainly as I knew my own name. The whispering stopped. The silence pressed against me, thick and waiting. Then a single word, not spoken aloud, not heard with ears, but placed directly into my mind. A name, my name, and with it, an understanding. I had been here before. I had spoken to this presence before. I had made a promise, and now it was time to fulfill it. The dream was shifting again. The air around me felt thick, like I was wading through unseen currents. The ground beneath my feet wasn't solid. It was something in between, something that responded to my weight, as if it could remember every step I had taken before. Shadows stretched unnaturally, reaching toward me with long, grasping fingers. I wasn't alone, but I couldn't yet see who, or what, was watching. A distant chime rang out, a hollow, echoing note that sent ripples through the air. I turned toward the sound and found myself standing before an enormous wooden door, its surface carved with symbols I didn't recognize. It hadn't been there a moment ago. My hands trembled as I reached for the handle, an instinctual hesitation crawling up my spine. The wood was cold, too cold, as if it had been waiting for me. I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was filled with dim, golden light, like the last moments of a fading sunset. Books lined the shelves, stacked haphazardly, their spines worn, their pages brittle. A heavy chair sat in the center, its leather surface cracked from age. The air smelled of dust and something older, something almost sweet, yet wrong. A whisper drifted through the room. "You remember now, don't you?" I turned sharply, but there was no one there. Just the chair, the books, and the dust suspended in the dim glow. But the whisper hadn't been in my head. It had come from the room itself. I took a hesitant step forward, and as I did, a book tumbled from the highest shelf, landing with a soft thud at my feet. The title was worn away, the cover faded, but when I opened it, the words inside were written in a hand I recognized. My own, pages filled with my handwriting, with entries I had no memory of writing. Dreams I had lived before, but forgotten upon waking. Conversations I didn't recall, with people whose names I should have known. The ink seemed fresh, as if the words had been written moments ago. "You wrote them," the whisper said again, closer this time. The chair in the center of the room creaked as if someone had just sat down. But it was empty. A chill wrapped around my spine as I read the last line on the open page. "It will find me tonight." The door behind me slammed shut. I wasn't alone anymore. The night folds around me like a thick, velvety curtain, muffling the sounds of the world beyond. I am no longer surprised when I find myself in the dream again. It no longer shocks me that the air smells exactly the same, like rain that hasn't fallen yet, like old fabric warmed by unseen hands. I am standing on a cobblestone street, one I know I have walked before. The stones beneath my feet are cool, but not unpleasantly so. There is no visible light source, yet the road is bathed in a dim, dreamlike glow. I take a step forward, and the familiar pull of the dream tugs at me. I am meant to go somewhere, meant to find something. Shadows shift in the alleyways between the tightly packed buildings, but they do not lunge, they do not run. Instead, they watch. I can feel them pressing against the edges of my vision, waiting. They know me now. I round a corner, and my breath catches. The same door is there, the heavy wooden one with the brass handle, carved with symbols I cannot read, but have traced with my fingertips before. My pulse beats against my throat as I realize something new. The door is already open. Inside, the house waits. I step across the threshold, and the scent of aged wood and candle smoke wraps around me. The wallpaper is faded, peeling in places where time has won. A long hallway stretches ahead, lined with doors that weren't always there. I know if I open them, I will see glimpses of the past, fragments of memories that aren't mine but recognize me nonetheless. A whisper drifts through the still air. You've been here before. I turn, but no one is behind me. The door has closed. I do not remember shutting it. Down the hallway, a single light flickers, casting restless shadows against the walls. As I move closer, my steps barely make a sound. The dream is shifting. The air is thicker, heavier, as though I am sinking into something unseen. The first door on my left creaks open. Inside, a room with no furniture, no windows, just a chair in the center and a mirror on the far wall. My reflection is already sitting, waiting for me. It tilts its head in recognition, and then it speaks. You're almost there. The words send a shiver down my spine, though the voice is my own. I step back, but the floor shifts beneath me. The walls ripple like fabric caught in the wind. The dream is folding inward, tightening its grip. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimes. But I do not know what time it is. I reach for the door, only to find it is no longer there. The reflection in the mirror rises to its feet, and then, without hesitation, it walks toward me. The dream does not begin where it left off. It never does. Instead of the mirror room, I am somewhere else, somewhere familiar, yet slightly wrong. A hallway stretches before me, its wooden floor polished to a dull shine, reflecting the dim glow of hanging lanterns. The scent of candle wax lingers in the air. The walls are lined with paintings, portraits of people I do not recognize, but who seem to recognize me. Their eyes follow my every step. At the end of the hallway there is a door. I know I must open it. My hand trembles as I grasp the handle. It feels cold, like metal left out in winter's breath. I twist, and the door swings open without resistance. Inside, the room is bathed in a low, golden light, as if lit by dying embers. It is a study, shelves filled with books, their spines cracked and worn. A heavy wooden desk sits in the center, covered in neatly stacked papers. I step closer. The ink on the pages is still wet. My name is written over and over again. A whisper drifts through the still air. It's been waiting for you. I turn sharply, but the room is empty. Or so I think. A chair stands in the farthest corner, barely visible in the shadows, and in that chair, someone is sitting. The figure is hunched forward, their hands resting on their knees. Their face is obscured by a curtain of dark, matted hair. They are breathing. I can hear the slow, deliberate inhale, the faint, rasping exhale. I know I should leave. I know I should not get closer, but the dream is pulling me forward. My heartbeat echoes in my ears as I take a step. The wooden floor creaks beneath my weight. The figure does not move. Another step. Their fingers twitch. Another step. A whisper slides from their lips. Soft, fragile, yet thick with meaning. You're almost awake. The words wrap around me like a noose. I do not understand them, but I feel them. I reach out. The figure lifts their head. I see my own face staring back at me. And then the lanterns flicker out. The darkness does not last. It never does. When the light returns, I am no longer in the study. The dream has changed again. I stand in a vast, open space, surrounded by towering bookshelves that stretch endlessly into the sky. Their edges fade into a misty gray, as if the dream itself has not finished painting the scene. The air is thick with the scent of aged paper and ink, a comforting aroma that feels almost real. But something is wrong. The books are whispering. I strain to hear, but the voices are too many, speaking over one another in an eerie, layered hum. Some murmur in languages I don't understand. Others call my name. I take a step forward, and the sound swells. A chorus of unseen mouths speaking in tandem. The shelves tremble as if alive, the books shuddering in their places. One volume falls. It lands at my feet, its cover a deep, cracked leather, worn from age and use. There is no title. I hesitate. Then, slowly, I kneel and open it. The pages are blank, but as I watch, ink seeps into the paper, forming words in delicate, looping script. It is a journal, my journal, from a life I don't remember living. I flip through the pages. Each entry describes things I have never done, places I have never been. Yet as I read, they feel familiar. A house with too many doors. A town where the clocks never move. A voice speaking through the cracks in a mirror. I turn to the final entry. The ink is still wet. I am writing this now, knowing I will not remember it when I wake, but I must leave myself a message. If you are reading this, if you are me, then you are close to the truth, but do not let it see you. Do not let it know you remember. My pulse quickens. I feel watched. I look up. The bookshelves are gone. I stand in a vast, empty space, the mist curling at my feet, and in the distance, a figure is waiting. It does not move. It does not speak. But I know it is watching, and I know it has been waiting for me to realize. The figure does not move, neither do I. A thick, pulsing silence spreads through the misty void, pressing against my ears like a weight. I cannot see its face, only its shape. A tall, unmoving shadow on the edge of my vision. It has been waiting. For how long, I do not know. I take a step forward. The mist swirls, shifting like breath, pulling away to reveal something beneath my feet. A path, worn stone stretches out before me, vanishing into the haze. The stones are uneven, chipped at the edges as if thousands have walked this road before me. I look up again. The figure is gone, but the path remains. I take another step, and the world changes. The mist curls away, revealing towering trees. Twisted, ancient things with gnarled roots that push through the stones. Their branches stretch high, disappearing into a dark sky. There is no moon, no stars, only shadow. The whispers return, not from books this time, from the trees. Their bark cracks and shifts, forming words that appear and vanish before I can fully read them. Turn back, you are not supposed to be here. It will follow. A chill spreads through my spine. I keep walking. The path winds forward, curving through the ancient forest. The deeper I go, the thicker the air becomes, heavy with something unseen. It clings to my skin, pushing against me, as if trying to hold me back. Then ahead, I see it, a doorway. Standing alone in the middle of the path, its frame carved from dark wood, its handle cold and iron, wrought. There is no wall, no structure, just the door. I hesitate. Then, from behind me, footsteps, soft, deliberate. Close, I turn. The path behind me is empty. But I know I am no longer alone. The air is heavy. The shadows stretch. The trees have stopped whispering. I reach for the door handle. Cold metal meets my fingers. I turn it. The door swings open, and I step through. I step forward. The moment I cross the threshold, the air shifts. It is subtle at first, like stepping from one season into another. The damp chill of the forest vanishes, replaced by something drier, heavier. The scent of old paper and dust fills my lungs. A library, not the one from before. This one is vast, endless. The shelves stretch so high that they vanish into darkness, towering over me like silent sentinels. Books line every inch, some ancient, their spines cracked and peeling, others pristine, untouched. They do not seem organized in any way. And yet, as I take a step forward, I feel something watching. Not someone, the books, they are not still. Their pages shift, turning on their own, whispering in hushed tones. They know I am here. I reach out to touch one, but before my fingers graze the cover, a sound. Soft at first, then louder, footsteps not my own, a slow, deliberate rhythm coming from beyond the shelves. Not rushing, not hesitant, measured. I freeze. The footsteps continue. They are not coming toward me. They are circling. I exhale, slow and careful. I do not know how I got here. I do not know why I am being watched. But I know that standing still will not change anything. So I move. The shelves form a maze, winding in ways that do not make sense. Sometimes, when I glance back, the path behind me is different than before. The bookshelves shift when I am not looking. I am not meant to leave, but I must. I turn a corner and freeze. There is a table at the center of this aisle, where no table should be. On it, a single book, different from the rest. Its cover is smooth, dark leather, the title embossed in gold. There is no dust on it, no sign of age. It has been waiting for me. I step closer, my pulse steady but my breath shallow. The gold lettering is strange, twisting and shifting as I try to read it. And yet I understand, the dream that remembers me. My breath catches, I reach out and the footsteps stop. Silence, heavy, suffocating. I do not turn around. But I know, something is standing behind me, watching, waiting. The book is warm beneath my fingertips. The moment I touch it, the room collapses. The shelves twist, spiral, vanish, and I am falling. I am weightless. The fall is endless, but there is no rush of air, no sensation of movement, just the feeling of descent. The world around me is not darkness, nor is it light. It is something in between. Shapes swirl in the periphery of my vision. Rooms, corridors, doorways that never fully form before they dissolve. I glimpse faces in the void, watching me as I pass. Some are familiar, others are strangers. I do not know if they are real. Then a shift, the fall slows, no impact, no jolt. Just a seamless transition. My feet touch the ground, and I am standing once more. The world around me has settled. I am in a bedroom, not mine. The walls are lined with floral wallpaper, faded at the edges, curling in places where the glue has given way. The bed is an antique, a four-poster with a quilted coverlet, the fabric stiff with age. A small wooden dresser stands against the far wall, its mirror clouded with time. And on that mirror, a reflection that is not mine. I am standing in front of it, but the person staring back is someone else. A woman, she looks like me, but her eyes are hollow, her expression empty. Her hands grip the edge of the dresser, knuckles pale. She is not blinking. I swallow. Slowly, cautiously, I lift my hand. My reflection does the same, but there is a lag. A delay, as though she is mimicking me rather than mirroring. And then she smiles. My stomach knots. The woman in the mirror tilts her head. Not much, just enough to let me know that she is aware, that she sees me. And then she lifts her hand and waves. I stumble back, but my feet never touch the floor. The moment I move, the room shifts. The bed vanishes, the dresser is gone, the mirror is everywhere, the walls, the ceiling, the floor, all reflective. There is no escape, no door, and the reflections, they are not me. Hundreds of them, standing in unison, lining the mirrored walls. Some have their backs turned, others stare directly at me, but none of them are real, because I am not in the mirrors. I have no reflection. I do not belong here. A whisper slithers through the space, curling in my ears. You are the dream now. The reflections move, not all at once. Some step forward. Others turn their heads, watching me from impossible angles. I do not want to see what happens when they reach me. I run. The mirrors stretch endlessly in all directions. My footsteps do not make a sound. The reflections follow, shifting as I move. Some stay still, waiting. Others step closer. I press my hands to the nearest surface, searching for a way out. There has to be a way out. And then, beneath my fingertips, the glass is no longer cold. It is warm, a pulse, like a heartbeat. A door, not visible but there, hidden beneath the illusion. I press harder, the reflections stop, the glass cracks. And then I fall again, but this time the descent is different. It is not weightless, it is not slow. It is pulling me, dragging me down like something wants me to reach the bottom. The mirrored world above is shrinking, the fractured reflections disappearing into the distance. Below me, the darkness is thick, alive, curling around my limbs as I plummet into its depths. Then a thud. I land hard, not on solid ground, but something soft, something that shifts beneath me, adjusting to my presence. I open my eyes. I am lying in a bed, but it is not my bed. The room is dim, lit only by the glow of a single bedside lamp. The walls are covered in old wallpaper, intricate floral patterns curling at the edges, the same room from before. But something has changed, something is wrong. The air is heavy, thick with the scent of dust and something faintly sweet, like dried flowers. The quilted blanket covering me is tucked in too tightly, pressing against my chest, holding me in place. I try to sit up. I can't. My arms are at my sides, locked beneath the covers. My legs will not move. A weight settles at the foot of the bed. I do not look immediately. I do not want to, but I have to. Slowly, carefully, I turn my head. There is someone sitting there, not a shadow, not a trick of the dim light. A figure, a woman. She is facing away from me, her long, dark hair hanging in loose waves over her shoulders. She wears an old-fashioned nightgown, the fabric worn thin, its lace edges fraying. Her hands rest gently in her lap, fingers folded neatly together. She does not move, she does not breathe, but I can feel her watching me. Even without seeing her face, I know she is watching. I try to speak, but my throat is dry. The words do not come. The woman tilts her head, not much, just enough to acknowledge that she knows I am awake. Then, slowly, she lifts her hand. Her fingers rise, and she places one pale, delicate finger against her lips. The room shifts. The bed is gone. The walls melt into darkness. The floor vanishes beneath me, and I am standing once more. But the woman is still there, only now she is facing me. Her eyes are empty, hollow, not human, but I recognize them. I have seen them in the mirror. I know this face because it is mine. She takes a step forward, then another. The space around us shrinks, closing in, pressing against my skin like the walls of a room that is no longer there. And then she speaks, "Wake up." The words do not belong to her. They come from behind me. I turn. Another figure stands in the distance. Blurred, unclear, but familiar, they reach for me, their voice stronger this time. "Wake up." The darkness cracks. I feel it splinter around me, shattering like glass, and then I open my eyes. I am awake, in my own bed. My room is exactly as I left it. The soft hum of the fan in the corner, the faint glow of the streetlights seeping through the curtains. But my body is cold. My hands shake as I push the blanket back, my pulse unsteady, hammering in my chest. I swing my legs over the side of the bed, planting my feet on the floor. The wood is solid beneath me. Real, but something is wrong. I feel it before I see it. A presence. I turn, and there she is, standing in front of the mirror. The woman, my reflection. She does not move. She does not blink. And then she lifts her hand and waves. The room is silent, but it is not empty. I do not move. I do not breathe. I simply watch, staring at my own reflection, standing there, watching me back. Except it is not me, not exactly. Her posture is too stiff. Her face is too still. Her lips are curved in the slightest of smiles, but the expression does not reach her eyes. She lifts her hand again, slowly placing her palm flat against the glass. I do not want to move, but something pulls me forward. My own hand rises, mirroring hers against the mirror's surface. It is cold, colder than glass should be, colder than anything should be. The moment my skin touches it, a sound whispers through the air, soft at first, then growing. A low, humming noise, like distant voices just out of reach, and then the surface ripples, not like a reflection distorted by breath or motion. Not like glass at all, like water, like an opening. The woman in the mirror leans forward. She does not push against the glass. She moves through it, like the barrier between us was never real at all. I stumble back, but there is nowhere to go. The space behind me stretches, shifts, disappears, and then her hand grips my wrist, cold, so cold, and she pulls. I do not have time to resist. I do not have time to scream. The world tips and I fall through. I do not land. I am simply somewhere else. The air is thick, heavy with moisture, the scent of damp stone and something ancient. I blink, adjusting to the dim glow around me. A hallway, not like anything I have seen before. The walls are tall, endless, twisting into the distance. They are lined with mirrors, not identical ones. Each one is different. Some small, some massive, some framed in gold, others cracked, missing entire pieces. They do not reflect the hallway. They do not reflect me. Instead, they show places. Rooms I do not recognize. Streets I have never walked. A forest bathed in silver moonlight. A house standing alone in an endless field. A bedroom that looks eerily familiar, but not quite right. I take a step forward. The sound echoes, stretching too far. The mirrors flicker. A whisper crawls through the air, a voice so soft it barely exists. Choose, the mirrors shift. The reflections change, and in one I see myself, standing in my own room, in my own bed, asleep. Or someone who looks like me, and she is smiling. I do not want to step closer, but my body moves on its own. The air feels thicker now, pressing in on my skin like unseen hands guiding me forward. The mirrors shift as I walk, their surfaces rippling like water, their reflections changing. Some show places, some show people, and some show me, not as I am now, not standing here, lost in this endless hallway of glass and shadow. These versions of me are different. In one mirror, I am older, lines etched into my face, eyes sharp with knowledge I do not yet have. I am standing in an unfamiliar place, a house I've never seen, yet it feels like it belongs to me. In another, I am younger, a child again, staring out of the mirror with wide, uncertain eyes. And yet, there is something wrong with the way she looks at me. Her expression is too calm, too knowing, and then one of the mirrors darkens. The reflection does not shift, does not ripple. It simply turns to black, like a door waiting to be opened. The whisper comes again, curling through the air like smoke. Choose, I shake my head. Choose what? But the voice does not answer. Instead, something moves in the darkness. A figure, watching me, not stepping forward, not reaching out, just waiting. My pulse pounds against my ribs, but I do not run. Somehow, I know if I run, I will never leave this place. So I take a breath, step forward, and I touch the glass. I am falling, but not down. I am falling through. The world around me is weightless, shifting in and out of focus, colors bleeding together in ways that should not be possible. My breath catches in my throat as I try to grasp onto something, anything. But there is nothing, only the sensation of being pulled. Then I land, not hard, not jarring. I simply exist again. And when I open my eyes, I am standing in a place I know. My room, or something that looks like my room. The details are right. The bed is there, the lamp, the desk. But the air is too still. The shadows stretch at the wrong angles. And then I see her, me, sitting on the bed. Watching me, she does not speak. She only smiles. And I realize I am not supposed to be here. Not like this. Not twice. The other me does not move. She sits on the edge of the bed, her hands resting in her lap, fingers laced together in a way that looks too practiced. Her eyes, my eyes, are dark, reflecting the dim light of the room like polished glass. She does not blink, does not breathe. She only watches. I do not know what to say. A strange, pressing silence fills the space between us, thick and heavy like the air before a storm. Then she tilts her head, just slightly, just enough for me to see that the smile on her face isn't quite right. Too still, too sharp, like it was placed there rather than formed naturally. My pulse thuds in my ears, but I force myself to stay still. She is waiting for something, and then, in a voice that is not mine, she speaks. "You should not have come back." The words do not match the movement of her lips. It is as if I am hearing them from somewhere else, from just behind me, just beneath the floor, just inside my skull. I swallow hard, back where. The other me does not answer. She only lifts her hand, slow, deliberate, and points. Not at the door, not at the window, at the mirror, the same mirror I had touched, the same one that had turned to black. I turn to look at it. The surface is no longer dark. It is empty, no reflection, no me, just a void. And something is moving inside it, a shape, shifting just beyond the glass, not a shadow, not a person. Something else, something that is watching. I feel the pull again, the slow, inevitable gravity of it. Like it is waiting for me to step forward, like it is waiting for me to choose. I glance back at the other me, but she is gone. Only the bed remains, covers perfectly smooth, as if no one had been sitting there at all. The silence deepens. I take a slow breath, and I step forward. The mirror no longer reflects the room. It no longer reflects me. It is a doorway now, a passage of shifting blackness, pulsing faintly, as if something beyond it is breathing. I take a step closer. The air warps. The edges of my vision tremble, distorting like heat rising from pavement. My breath feels thicker in my throat. Behind me, the room is silent. The bed, the walls, the door. They are fading. Not into darkness, but into something less, something unfinished, as if they were only ever props in a stage play, and now that the final act is beginning, they are no longer needed. I reach out. My fingers brush the surface of the mirror. It is not cold. It is not smooth. It is soft. Like mist, like breath. And then something touches my hand from the other side. A grip, gentle at first. Testing, then firm. I do not pull away. I let it pull me forward. The surface bends, stretching around me, swallowing me in slow, silent ripples. There is no sensation of falling, no weight, only the feeling of being carried. I do not know for how long. Time is meaningless here, and then light, dim, cold light, filtering through high, arched windows. I am standing. The floor beneath me is smooth stone, dark as slate, stretching endlessly in all directions. But I am not alone. I feel them before I see them. A presence, many presences watching from the edges of the light. Figures just barely visible, not moving, not speaking, just there. I do not know how, but I understand. They have been waiting for me. And now I have arrived. I stand in the center of the vast, dark expanse. The figures that have been waiting do not step forward, yet I can feel them pressing closer. Not physically, but in some other way, like the weight of a deep ocean, like the hush before a storm. The air is thick with expectation. I do not speak. I know now that words are meaningless here. Instead, I listen. Not with my ears, but with something deeper, and I hear it. A whisper, not a voice, but a thought pressing into my mind, as if it has always been there, waiting for me to notice. You have come far. I do not answer. The presence continues. You have seen what was hidden. You have walked the path unwritten. You have reached the threshold of knowing. The figures shift, their outlines flickering like candle flames, but there is one final step. A ripple moves through the space before me. The air shudders and something changes. A door appears. It is unlike any door I have ever seen. Tall, impossibly tall, made of something that is neither wood nor stone nor metal. It shimmers as if it is both solid and unreal, and at its center a handle, simple, waiting. Will you open it? The question is not a command. It is not a demand. It is a choice, a final choice. I step forward. My fingers hover over the handle. The figures do not move. The silence deepens. I take a breath, long, steady, and I turn the handle. The door swings open without a sound. Beyond it there is light, brighter than anything I have ever seen, but it does not hurt my eyes. It is endless. It is everything, and as I step forward, I understand. This is part 30. This is the end, or perhaps the beginning.